Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. I'm Ty Glenn. Hope you guys are having a great Friday. Got a lot of NHL news to discuss from Wednesday and Thursday, so make sure that you stay tuned in to the end of this episode before we go ahead and get started. As always, make sure that you're following the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're with you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So you want to make sure that you're staying up to date on the latest NHL news when you're following the Hockey Talk TG podcast. So make sure you stay up to date on the latest episode of the Hockey Talk TG podcast, so you can stay up to date on the latest NHL news and, hockey news in general that happens. This is your number one podcast for all things hockey. So you want to make sure that you're following this podcast so you can get the latest NHL news when it comes out. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. So Alex Ovechkin, he scored goal number 892 in the Capitals' 5-1 loss over the Hurricanes on Wednesday. He is 3 goals away from passing Wayne Gretzky on the NHL's all-time goal-scoring list. And the Capitals moved to 48, 19, and 9 of the season. They play the Blackhawks at home today at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That game will be on NHL Network. Wayne Gretzky, the great one, will be in the building. Gary Bettman, the NHL commissioner, will be in the building. And this game will be a highly anticipated game as all eyes are on the great 8 for passing or potentially passing this game, Wayne Gretzky for the NHL's all-time goal-scoring record. He could possibly pass it today. Of course, the Capitals' next game is against the Islanders, and then they have back-to-back games against the Columbus Blue Jackets. But as a Blackhawks fan, I want this to be the game that Alex Ovechkin breaks the record in. I don't want to wait to see it in the Islanders game. I don't want to wait to see it in the Blue Jackets game. I want this to be the game that Alex Ovechkin breaks the record in as a Blackhawks fan. You listened to the podcast before. You heard me say this dozens and dozens of times if you've been listening to the podcast before. So I really hope that this is the game that Alex Ovechkin breaks the record in. And overall, you're in front of your home fans, the fans in DC. This is not a road game. This is a home game. It's a home game, man. So it would be better to break the record in this game against the Blackhawks. Besides, you scored your 800th career goal against the Blackhawks. Why not break the record against the Blackhawks? So I think that would be pretty much fitting. I think everybody is hoping that Alex Ovechkin breaks the record in that game. And this was an interesting post from Sportsnet's David Amber on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it now. Wayne Gretzky had 894 goals in 1,487 games. Alex Ovechkin has 892 goals in 1,485 games. And this game will be his 1,486th game right here. And if he scores tonight, he could, somewhat move closer and closer to, how many games that Wayne Gretzky scored 894 goals in. But I'm telling you guys, as a Blackhawks fan, I want this to be the game that Alex Ovechkin breaks the record in. I want to see a hat trick in this game for Alex Ovechkin to break the record. I don't want to see 1 goal in the game. I don't want to see 2 goals in the game. I want to see a hat trick in the game. You can get an empty net goal for all I care to break the record in. But if you're facing a team like the Blackhawks, the game probably won't be as close as people think it will be, because people think this game might be a close game. But when you're facing a team like the Chicago Blackhawks, you expect this game to be what the Avalanche and Blue Jackets game was yesterday, and that was a 7-3 win. You expect the game to be somewhat like that if you're facing the Chicago Blackhawks. But take a look at the Washington Capitals schedule. They have 7 games remaining of the season. And like I mentioned, they played today against the Blackhawks. They played the Islanders on Sunday. That will be a road game. And then they play the Hurricanes Thursday. And then next Saturday, they have a back-to-back home set against the Columbus Blue Jackets on Saturday. They're on the road to Columbus to face the Blue Jackets. And then Sunday, they return home to face the Blue Jackets. And then that'll actually be their final home game, though, Sunday, April the 13th against the Blue Jackets. Final home game of the season for the Washington Capitals. And then after that, they have two games on the road. Tuesday, April the 15th, they face the New York Islanders on the road. And then on Thursday, April the 17th, they face Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, if it does come to that game for Alex Ovechkin to break the record in, I surely wouldn't mind, because it's Alex Ovechkin versus Sidney Crosby. And everybody grew up watching this rivalry. These two players debuted in the NHL the same year. Of course, there was no 2004-2005 NHL season because of a lockout that year. And, of course, Alex Ovechkin was drafted in the 2004 NHL draft. Sidney Crosby drafted in the 2005 NHL draft. And they both debuted in the NHL at the start of the 2005-2006 NHL seasons. So it will be fitting for Alex Ovechkin to break the record in that game. But as a Blackhawks fan, I'm hoping for tonight to be the night that he breaks the record in that game. And of course, I heard Wayne Gretzky say that he was going to be traveling city to city to see Alex Ovechkin break the record in person. And he also said that he will be the first person that he will come up to shake Alex Ovechkin's hand and congratulate him on breaking the record. But moving to the other side of this Capitals and Hurricanes game, the Hurricanes, they officially clinch a berth into the 2025 Stanley Cup Playoffs with a 5-1 win over the Washington Capitals, and they moved to 46-24-4 of the season. They won 12 of their last 14 games. Special teams in this game was key for the win. They were 3 for 8 on the power play and 3 for 4 on the penalty kill. And for the Hurricanes, this is the 6th consecutive playoff appearance for them. And of course, it goes all the way back to 2019 when they were in the Stanley Cup playoffs against the New York Islanders and the Boston Bruins and the Washington Capitals. They got eliminated from the Boston Bruins that year in the Eastern Conference Final. And I know I said those teams out of order because they faced the Capitals in the first round that year, and then they swept the Islanders, and then they got swept by the Boston Bruins that year. Jackson Blake, he had a 2-goal performance in this one. And Seth Jarvis, he had a goal and an assist for a 2.9. He is now up to 30 goals for the season. So congratulations to Seth Jarvis. And Shane Gostisbehere had 2 assists in the game. And Freddie Anderson, he made 20 saves for Carolina. 7 straight win for Freddie Anderson. So congratulations to him. And the Hurricanes are 9 points behind the Capitals for first place in the Metro and 9 points ahead of the Devils. They're currently in second place in the Metropolitan Division, so we could end up seeing Hurricanes and Devils for first round of the Stanley Cup Playoffs, which if that is to be, I'm taking the Hurricanes in the clean. It's either going to be a clean sweep or it's going to be the Hurricanes winning in 5 games. And then normally I would say it would be 6 or 7 games for the Hurricanes and Devils if they were to face each other in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But the Devils are having a lot of injury issues. They're without Jack Hughes. They're without Dougie Hamilton. I don't know if Andre Palat is still injured for them. So it's just been a struggle for the New Jersey Devils. And I believe the Hurricanes, if they were to face the Devils in the first round, it's either going to be a clean sweep, which that is what I'm most likely leaning towards, or it's going to be the Hurricanes in 5. And fun fact, in this game between the Capitals and Hurricanes, there were 142 penalty minutes in this game, with 122 penalty minutes in the third period alone. That is impressive. And of course, there was multiple fights, multiple game misconducts in this game. So to me, this felt like the Royal Rumble. Or I was going to say WrestleMania, but this actually felt more like the Royal Rumble to me than it did with WrestleMania, because you have a bunch of guys in the ring, and then you throw the person out, they get eliminated, and then there are a lot of game misconducts in this game. So this felt more like a Royal Rumble match in this game. And of course, one fight that did stick out to me was the Jalen Chatfield and Connor McMichael fight. Of course, they dropped the mitts. Jalen Chatfield taking down a helmetless Connor McMichael. And, of course, I think they received game misconduct as well. And it was actually a frame-by-frame post from Spitting Chicklets that you guys can check out on the Twitter or X page. And, of course, Tom Wilson, of course, he received a double minor in this game for roughing and a 10-minute game misconduct following the counter with Sebastian Aho. Again, not surprising because we know Tom Wilson, he's a goon. He's a gritty, physical guy that you want on your team. He has no problem getting into the mix with it. So when I first saw this, I wasn't surprising. Logan Thompson ended up leaving this game because of a lower body injury, so Charlie Lindgren made 17 saves in relief. Logan Thompson did get the start. He left the game, upper body injury. Charlie Lindgren steps in. He makes 17 saves. And the Capitals, as you guys all know, they return home to face the Blackhawks at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That game will air on NHL Network. A game that we could possibly see Alex Ovechkin break the goal record, which I am fingers crossed, I'm hoping that this is the game that he breaks the goal record in. But we'll just have to see how everything plays out. And for the Hurricanes, they start a 4-game road trip in Detroit against the Red Wings Friday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. But moving on to another team in the Eastern Conference that has clinched the playoff berth on Wednesday in the Toronto Maple Leafs. So the Toronto Maple Leafs, they clinch a playoff berth with a 3-2 win over the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. And they move to 46-25-4 of the season. They're 4-0-1 in their past 4-0-1 in their past 5 games. And it's the 9th consecutive playoff appearance for the Toronto Maple Leafs, although I really wouldn't count 2020 as a year that they made the playoffs, because that year was the COVID year, and things were really weird that year. And the Toronto Maple Leafs actually had a qualifying round in the 2020 quote-unquote Stanley Cup playoffs. That was actually a qualifying round for the Toronto Maple Leafs, in which they lost to the Columbus Blue Jackets. So the Blue Jackets ended up actually making the playoffs that year, 2020, whereas the Toronto Maple Leafs, they did not qualify for the 2020 Stanley Cup playoffs. So that was actually a qualifying round. So I really would count 2020 as a year that the Maple Leafs have made the playoffs. So for me, I would say this is 2021, 2022, 2023, fifth straight year that the Maple Leafs have made the Stanley Cup playoffs. Fifth straight year that the Leafs have made the Stanley Cup playoffs, not 9th straight year. But Mitch Marner and Matthew Knies each had a goal and an assist for a 2-point night. Matthew Knies' goal ended up being the game winner in this one, and both Mitch Marner and Matthew Knies had goals in the third period. Mitch Marner had the game. He broke the tie in the third period, and of course, Matthew Knies iced the game for the game winner. Sam Reinhart scored in the third period on the power play to make it 3-2 for his 37th goal of the season, but obviously it wasn't enough to complete the comeback for the Cup champs. John Tavares also scored in this game for Toronto. Of course, he and Mitch Marner will be big names on the market for this summer, as those two will be UFAs in the free agency for this upcoming offseason. We'll see if they re-sign with Toronto or not. And Anthony Stolarz, the former Florida Panthers netminder, made 29 saves on 31 shots faced in net. And for the Florida Panthers, Gustav Forsling and Sam Reinhart scored for Florida, while Sergei Bobrovsky made 23 saves on 26 shots faced in net. And the Panthers, not going so well for the defending Cup chances. They have now lost their 3rd straight game, 0-2-1 during the span, and they moved to 44-27-4 of the season. And the Panthers, they continue their 4-game road trip against the Senators Saturday at 1 o'clock p.m. Central Time. Unfortunately, this is going to be no battle of the Tkachuk brothers, as Matthew Tkachuk is still out with a upper body injury he sustained with Team USA in the Four Nations. And the Maple Leafs will face the Columbus Blue Jackets Saturday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. All right, moving on to the Rangers and Wild game that was on Wednesday. Vincent Trocheck scoring the overtime game-winning goal as the Rangers win 5-4 against the Wild. He scored 24 seconds into overtime, and they moved to 36, 32, and 7 of the season. They're 2 points behind the Canadiens for second place in a wild card spot. Of course, the Canadiens won yesterday against their rivals, the Boston Bruins. It was a 4-1 win for the Montreal Canadiens, and Lane Hudson, he had a point in that game, and I think Nick Suzuki scored in that game as well. Terry Panarin, he had a goal and assist in that game for a 2-point night. Braden Schneider, Keandre Miller, and Chris Kreider also scored for the Rangers, while Igor Shesterkin made 20 saves on 24 shots faced in that. And we talked about on the podcast before that at this time of year, that points are at the essence. Points are necessary. Like, you cannot be losing these games at this point. And the Canadiens and Rangers are 2 points behind the Canadiens for second place in the wild card spot. Of course, Canadiens, they hold that second wild card spot along with the Ottawa Senators. Senators hold first place wild card spot in Eastern Conference. They won 2-1 over the Tampa Bay Lightning yesterday. So points are at the essence, and we talked about how a Canadian team could possibly win the Stanley Cup this year with how many Canadian teams are in playoff spots as of right now. We could see a Canadian team break that 30-plus year Canadian Cup drought. Of course, the last Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup was the Montreal Canadiens. They got it done in 1993 against the LA Kings. Wayne Gretzky was on that team then. He was on the LA Kings then, not the Montreal Canadiens. So we'll see if a Canadian team will win the Stanley Cup this year, which pretty much shaping up to be the thing since a lot of Canadian teams are in a playoff spot. You got the Maple Leafs, you got the Canadiens, the Senators, the Jets, the Oilers. So it's possible that we see a Canadian team take home the cup, but we'll just have to see. Another thing that stuck out from this New York Rangers win was Gabriel Perreault making his NHL debut. He was drafted 23rd overall in the first round of the 2023 NHL draft by the Rangers. He had 48 points in 37 games played for Boston College. Of course, the BC Eagles season ended after a 3-1 loss to the NCAA National College Hockey Champions, the Denver Pioneers, who look to win their second straight title. So their season ended with a 3-1 loss to them in the regional tournament, and the Pioneers punched their ticket to the Frozen Four, which on Wednesday's episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast, we will preview that for you guys. So stay tuned for that. But looking at this game for Gabriel Perreault, he finished with a -1 rating. He logged in 13 minutes and 38 seconds of ice time, 3 shots on goal, and he had 2 giveaways in this game. And of course, the -1 rating, I believe, came where Brock Faber had scored, and the puck went off of Gabriel Perreault's stick. And Gabriel Perreault, he played second line left wing with Alexis Lafreniere and JT Miller, and was also on the Rangers' second power play unit. And he got a lot of support from his former Boston College teammates. They attended the game to support Gabriel Perreault, his NHL debut, pretty much of what they did for Ryan Leonard in his NHL debut in Boston. So hopefully Gabriel Perreault's season, NHL career, I should say, goes out well for him. Wish him nothing but the best in the NHL. He's going to get his first NHL goal soon. I just know it. But we'll just have to see how. And he could actually score his first NHL goal in this final stretch of the regular season, but we'll just have to see how things play out. All right, moving on to the St. Louis Blues. So Robert Thomas, he scored the overtime game-winning goal as the Blues win 5-4 in overtime against the Pittsburgh Penguins for their 11th straight win. That's right. You heard me right. This is the 11th straight win for the St. Louis Blues. And they moved to 42, 28, and 7 of the season. They're 2 points ahead of the Minnesota Wild for first place in the Central Division. 7 points behind the Colorado Avalanche for third place in the Central Division, which the Avalanche did clinch a playoff berth last night. I'll get into that in just a second. And fun fact, this is the last time that the Blues won 11 straight games was during the 2018-19 season from January 23rd to February 19th of 2019. And 2019, gotta remember, that was the year that they won the Stanley Cup. So they're bringing back some of that 2019 Cinderella type Stanley Cup run to 2025. And Jake Neighbors, he scored twice in the win. Jimmy Snuggerud recorded his first NHL point on one of Jake Neighbors' goals. He made his NHL debut in Tuesday's 2-1 overtime win over the Detroit Red Wings. Jordan Kyrou also scored in this game. He's up to 33 goals of the season. Could be an overreaction, but could see Jordan Kyrou get 40 goals this season before this season is done with, but we'll just have to see. That might be an overreaction right there. Paolo Buchnevich also scored in this game, while Joel Hofer made 24 saves on 28 shots faced in net. And for the Pittsburgh Penguins, Brian Rust had a goal and an assist for a 2-point night. Rucker McGordy, he recorded his first NHL point and his first NHL goal for a 2-point night. First NHL goal to tie the game up at 4 with 24 seconds remaining in the third period. This is his 5th NHL game. I know a lot of fans have been criticizing him, saying that, oh boy, he sucks. He's not that good. He's a bust. But you guys got to be patient with Rucker McGordy. I still believe that there is potential in this kid to be a star player in the National Hockey League. I still had that belief. Yes, it's his 5th NHL game that he scored NHL goal. Yes, he spent a lot of time in the minors in the AHL, but I still believe that Rucker McGordy could be a great player in this league for years to come. I still believe in this kid. I'm not going to be like one of the criticizers and saying that he has no potential or that he shouldn't even be in the NHL. He deserves to be in the NHL. He has the potential to be in the NHL. And of course, he made his NHL debut back in October against New York Rangers, which didn't go so well for him. A 6-0 shutout loss for the Pittsburgh Penguins in that game. Rickard Rakell Connor McMichael also scored for the Pittsburgh Penguins in this one, while Tristan Jarry made 14 saves on 19 shots faced in net. And the Penguins, they lost 4 of their last 5 games, 1-3-1 during the span, and they moved to 30, 34, and 12 of the season. They continue their 3-game Central Division road trip in Dallas against the Stars Saturday at 2 o'clock p.m. Central Time, which will be a first of a back-to-back set for them. Of course, they'll be in Chicago taking on the Blackhawks on Sunday. And the Blues, they conclude their 3-game homestand against the Colorado Avalanche Saturday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. And speaking of the Colorado Avalanche, like I said a few minutes ago, they clinched the 2025 Stanley Cup Playoffs with a 7-3 win over the Columbus Blue Jackets on Thursday, and they moved to 47-26-4 of the season. They're 6-1-1 in their past 7 games, and they're 7-2-1 in their last 10 games. And for the Avalanche, this is the 8th consecutive playoff appearance for them. Of course, that dates all the way back to 2018, where they faced the Nashville Predators in the first round. Of course, the first round exit that year against the Preds. Nathan McKinnon, Charlie Coyle, and Devon Tage each had a goal and an assist for a they each had a goal and 2 assists for a 3-point night. And Cale Makar scored his 30th goal of the season. He's the 9th defenseman in NHL history to reach the mark, and first since Mike Green of the Washington Capitals, and he did it back in 2008, 2009, and he had 31 goals that season. And this was an interesting post that I saw from the NHL PR account on Instagram, and they upload this on Twitter as well. Cale Makar joins elite company with 30 goals and 60 points in one season. Of course, Paul Coffey done it 4 times. He last done it in the 1988-1989 NHL season. Ray Bourque done it in the 1983 and 1984 NHL season. Dennis Potvin done it 3 times. He last did it in the 1978-1979 NHL season. And Bobby Orr, which, of course, people have been comparing Cale Makar to Bobby Orr, so I really wasn't surprised at this. Of course, Bobby Orr done it 5 times. He last did it in the 1974-1975 NHL season. And Brock Nelson scored his 24th goal of the season in the win and scored his 4th goal as a member of the Colorado Avalanche. Of course, he was traded to the Avalanche at the NHL trade deadline in March. Parker Kelly and Miles Wood scored for Colorado, while Mackenzie Blackwood made 27 saves. And for the Pittsburgh Penguins, Sean Monahan, Zach Aston Reese, and Boone Jenner scored for me. Did I say Pittsburgh Penguins? If I say Pittsburgh Penguins, I am terribly sorry. This is for Columbus. Sean Monahan, Zach Aston Reese, and Boone Jenner scored for Columbus, not Pittsburgh. And Elvis Merzlikins was pulled in the game, and he allowed 7 goals on 28 shots before being replaced by Daniel Tarasov, who made 4 saves in relief for the Blue Jackets. And the Blue Jackets are now 4 points behind the Canadiens for second place in the wild card spot in the Eastern Conference, and they moved to 34, 31, and 9 of the season. They play the Toronto Maple Leafs Saturday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. The Avalanche will be in St. Louis on Saturday to face the Blues at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. But moving on to a team that has been eliminated from playoff contention in the Anaheim Ducks. They were eliminated from the playoffs following their 4-1 loss to the Calgary Flames on Thursday, and they moved to 33, 34, and 8 of the season. 7th straight year that the Ducks have missed the playoffs. Of course, their last playoff appearance being in 2018, in which Ryan Getzlaf and Corey Perry won the team then. 5th team in the NHL to be eliminated from playoff contention, and 5th team in the Western Conference alone to be eliminated from playoff contention. Of course, the other ones being the San Jose Sharks, Chicago Blackhawks, Nashville Predators, and Seattle Kraken. No team in the Eastern Conference has been eliminated from playoff contention, so that's kind of hard to believe. So it's kind of crazy when you think about it. Owen Zellweger scored the lone goal for the Anaheim Ducks. John Gibson left this game because of a lower body injury. He made 23 saves on 26 shots faced the net. Lucas Dahlstall stepped in for the 3rd period, and he made 7 saves in relief. And the Ducks were outshot in this game, 34-27. For the Flames, Blake Coleman, he scored twice in this game, broke a 10-game goal drought. He had a shorthanded goal and a power play goal for this. But for the Ducks, they need to look on developing their young players and seeing where they go from here. They may look to move on from John Gibson. He's in the 6th year of an 8-year, $6.4 million contract deal. That contract will expire at the 2026-27 season. He'll be a UFA at the time. He'll also be 33 years old. There were some rumors that John Gibson probably could get moved at the NHL trade deadline, but that didn't happen. So the Ducks are going to have to do a lot of strategic planning in the offseason if they want to compete for a playoff spot again. But they'll be in Vancouver to take on the Vancouver Canucks Saturday at 3 o'clock p.m. Central Time. The Flames will be at home Saturday to take on the Vegas Golden Knights at 9 o'clock p.m. Central Time. All right, so this was something that I did not say in Wednesday's episode of the Hockey Talk TG podcast, but the NHL and Rogers Communication TV broadcast announced a 12-year deal on Wednesday, and that will start in the 2026-27 NHL season, and that will go all the way to the 2037-2038 NHL season. And it is valued at 11 billion Canadian dollars, and approximately $11 billion for Canadians, and for US dollars, 7.7 billion. And of course, Rogers will attain the national rights across all media platforms, including television, digital, and streaming in all languages, including regular season and regional out-of-market games, Stanley Cup Playoffs, Stanley Cup Final, and other special events that they have. And this deal is more. This deal doubles is more than the 12-year, $5.2 billion. Of course, this is in Canadian dollars, by the way. Contract deal in 2013, and of course, this will possibly be a 50% viewership, according to Rogers CEO Tony Staffery, in many years to come during this contract deal. And of course, this agreement underscores Rogers' commitment to being somewhat of a central player in Canadian sports broadcasting. And we could see this play a big role in the future for Canadian sports and for the NHL. All right, NHL games on the slate for today. So not really busy around the league for this Friday. There's only 3 games on the slate. Starting with the Carolina Hurricanes taking on Detroit Red Wings at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. Last meeting of the season between the two teams. The Hurricanes won the first 2 meets against the Red Wings. They won 2-1 in regulation in Detroit, and they won 4-2 at home at Lenovo Center. And then the game that everybody will have their eyes on, the Chicago Blackhawks taking on the Washington Capitals at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That game will air on NHL Network. Alex Ovechkin up to 892 goals. He just needs a hat trick to break the record. You guys can tell how hyped and jittery and anticipated I am, because I said this before on the podcast. I said it in today's episode. Now, as a Blackhawks fan, I want this to be the game that he breaks the record. I want to see Alex Ovechkin with a hat trick in this game. He needs a hat trick to break the record. And of course, this is the last meeting of the season between the Capitals and the Blackhawks. Blackhawks won 3-2 in regulation at the United Center back on December 17th. They look to sweep the season series in this one, but of course, that's most likely not going to happen. We'll just have to see how things will play out. And then the final game of the night, we got the Minnesota Wild taking on the New York Islanders at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. Last meeting of the season between the two teams. The Wild won 6-3 against the Islanders back in St. Paul. They look to sweep the season series against the Islanders in this one. All right, guys, that is going to do it for this episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. Really do appreciate it. As always, don't forget to follow the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and you are subscribed to the YouTube channel with you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you want to stay up to date on the latest NHL news and hockey news in general, this is the podcast for it. So you want to make sure that you're following the Hockey Talk TG podcast so you can get the latest NHL news when it comes out. Well, other than that, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. God first, as always. Be blessed. I'll see you guys Monday for another episode of the Hockey Talk TG podcast, and hopefully I get to talk about Alex Ovechkin breaking the goal record in Friday's game against the Blackhawks. But we'll just have to see how things will play out in that game. And for you guys, take care and have a great, blessed weekend.